Lay an Open Rose Garden, an Adrienette Hanahaki alternate universe sequel series fanfiction, Chapter 6. Marinette, you're awake! Adrien cried as he rushed to her side. She winced, but smiled at him painfully. Adrien felt a stab of guilt. It was all his fault that she was like this. All his fault that she was in this situation, that everyone was in this situation. Hi guys, Marinette said. Her voice was hoarse and raspy. It was probably difficult for her to speak. Alia cried out, a sob, and fell into Marinette's arms. I was so scared you wouldn't wake up, she said. Marinette gave her a small smile. We all did, Nino said, speaking quieter than he normally did. Marinette sent them all an apologetic smile. I'm sorry, especially to you two, Marinette said, looking up at Adrien and Nino, specifically. I didn't tell you what was going on, and I'm really sorry. It was really hard for me, honestly. I couldn't, she admitted. Adrien shook his head. No, you have no need to be, he said firmly. Marinette looked away from him, mumbling a thank you. Adrien's heart ached, though it probably hurt her more to see him than the other way around. Still, Adrien wanted to desperately make the world right again. Speaking of which, what is wrong? What happened? Nino asked. Marinette looked at him and then at the red-haired doctor. I believe your parents are on their way, so I will explain when they get here, Dr. Tiki said. Everyone nodded around. It was quiet, and that was when Adrien took the time to finally look at Marinette. He hadn't seen her for over a week and a half, and her appearance had changed a lot. Normally, Marinette was beautiful and bright. She flushed pink a lot and always had a smile on her face. On typical days, her hair was done, either in special braids Adrien had no idea how she had created, or her usual pigtails that looked honest to God adorable. But right now, she looked awful, and Adrien hated it. He hated to even admit it, really. Her hair was pulled up, but in a messy, falling apart ponytail. Her under eyes were dark and puffy. It didn't seem like she'd gotten much sleep. Her skin was pale and almost ghost-like. The pale white made him want to burst out into tears. Her lips weren't pulled into a kind grin. They were broken and thin and chapped. This wasn't Marinette's. This wasn't his best friend with a heart of gold. Adrien covered his face for a second. He hated seeing Marinette like this, and he wanted to make it go away. Inside, his mind gnawed at him, at the fact that she had fallen in love with him, and that her kindness had been repaid in this way. God, it was all his fault. Adrien was an awful person, especially with trying to shove Kagami in her face. He now understood why Kagami had been wary of her in the beginning, and why Marinette seemed so hesitant to meet her. He had been stupidly blind and didn't notice any of it. Adrien, you look like you're the one suffering, Marinette said with a dry laugh. Adrien pulled the biggest smile he could, which honestly still wasn't much. I'm sorry, he said. As per usual, Marinette understood exactly what he was talking about. She weakly reached out a hand. Adrien basically lunged at it and held her hand tight. He could feel her trying to squeeze back. Marinette tilted her head and smiled, still in a sweet way. Leave it to Marinette to still be an angel while basically on her deathbed. Don't be, she said softly. It's not miserable in the way you think it is. I had no choice in the matter, but I'd gladly do it again. Fall in love with him, she means. He knew what she meant. Adrien gave her a slightly bitter smile. Was he so destructive that when people fell in love with him, it only ended in death and sadness and tears? Marinette! A short Asian woman and a lumbering man ran into the room. Adrien could only guess that those were Marinette's parents. He, Alia, and Nino stepped back to allow them space with their daughter, but Eventually, Dr. Tiki stepped in to explain the situation. Adrienette has Hanahaki's disease. It's uncommon, but it creates a flower that grows in the patient's lungs. Symptoms include coughing, flower petals, and whole flowers. Unfortunately, it is fatal because when it grows too large and unchecked, her eyes flickered towards Marinette. The patient can be suffocated with the lack of oxygen to their body. Marinette's mother let out a sob.
Is there a cure?
Her father asked. The doctor sucked in a breath. There is, in fact, two cures. However, the more viable option does come with some unwanted and life-altering side effects. And the other, it's more ideal, however, it is more of a game of chance than I normally like to take. Adrien could feel Alia's eyes on him. His mind shouted insults at himself, and Adrien's fist tightened at his sides. What a terrible person he was. He was a terrible, awful, awful human. What is the first option? Marinette's mother asked. Removing the flower surgically, the doctor said. However, it results in weaker lungs, loss of romantic feelings, and sometimes amnesia, memory loss. Most of the time, none of these things can ever be regained, hence why we need explicit consent to perform the surgery. It is very life-changing. Many people chose to forego it, she explained.
Why would someone not take it? And why does it remove romantic feelings?
Nino asked. Dr. Tiki looked at him. It is born of unrequited love. Remove the flower, you remove the flower, you remove the feelings. It can save a person's life. However, because the flower is a physical manifestation of love and affection, most patients never regain that feelings of love again. Some people are okay with that result. They end up identifying as aromantic or asexual, or both even. But many others are not. Nino quieted after hearing that. Unrequited love? Marinette's mother whispered. Marinette's face turned red and she looked around awkwardly. I don't really think I want to talk about this right now, she said while everyone stared at her for an explanation. Her parents looked at each other and then back at her. All right, dear, her mother said nervously. On the topic, the doctor spoke up. Marinette, would you like to have this surgery done? Adrien thought that she was at least going to take a moment to think about her answer, about the literal life and death situation and choice she was about to make. Instead, she surprised nearly everyone in the room. No, I don't. Adrien felt his entire body go numb. But you'll die, Alia cried out. Marinette looked at her with watery eyes. I'd rather that than live a half-life. I'd rather live my dying breath with brightness in my soul rather than years with dulled senses, the black-haired girl said defiantly. Marinette, Adrien forced out quietly. She looked at him and smiled a bit. It didn't seem pained, at least it didn't seem more pained from looking at him. I don't regret it one bit, she told him. Adrien felt like he regretted every single thing he had ever done in his entire life.